Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for joining this quick webinar. I'm Zach, account executive here at Seven Learnings, and really the purpose of this webinar is to first and foremost explore AI-driven, data-driven pricing in UK retail. First, we'll look to explore the evolution of data-led decision making and how this is applied to the world of pricing. Then we'll look more specifically at the topic of predictive pricing and really why UK retailers are very excited about this topic. And then lastly, we'll tie this all together with real life examples of where we're seeing this in place today. So, a little bit about me. Really, my first, opening into the pricing world came at university, studying economics. Quickly, I learned more about supply and demand and how if you change the price of a product, the quantity demanded for that product is going to change as well. Also, topics like price elasticity, willingness to pay, price discrimination were always of interest to me, especially in a market whereby, where we live right now, it's not the most transparent market. I then decided to take this and work at Sainsbury's, one of the largest grocers in the UK. I was responsible there for designing and executing their online promotional campaigns by offering customers SKU level coupons. I did most of the SQL analytics and would be responsible for monitoring the results of that campaign. This was, again, kind of an insight into how promotions and pricing are working together. And now here at Seven Learnings, I'm speaking daily with UK retailers on their biggest pricing challenges and understanding more and more about the landscape and the approach that's being used. So I think what's important is to cover originally, the evolution of data-led decision making. Really, what we saw before the 2000s was that decisions were being made on a kind of gut feeling. For example, if you're a store manager, you may have back in the 90s have decided that we're going to purchase certain stock because we understand that, okay, this time last year it was needed. Really, this was because of the limited access to data, not having this readily available or on the tip of your fingers. And then at the bottom, we can see how this would relate to pricing. Very much a gut feeling approach whereby the intuition is being done via heuristics and really cognitive biases and experiences. Then, looking a little bit more recently in like the 2010s, really the technical advancements of POS systems and just systems to be able to harvest data more quickly and more in a structured manner meant that retailers were able to use a lot more data tools such as analytics tools, Power BI, and other kind of analytics tools. This means that, within pricing, what we would typically see during this time is that actually retailers started to do more historical analysis, whereby they would say, okay, if a discounted campaign performed well last year, that then it makes sense to run it again. Moving now towards kind of what we're seeing today, really the rise of e-commerce has caused the data world to explode. A very interesting statistic by IBM, back in 2015, actually 90% of the world's data was generated in just the previous 2 years before that. So really, first and foremost, this is because retailers are being able to harvest this data, but then also retailers were realizing that it's a competitive advantage to invest in their technology stack and have the solid data foundations. With these solid data foundations, this led rise to the kind of analytics adoption of machine learning, predictive analytics, and therefore pricing around this time was more forecasting focused based on the data that retailers were looking at. They still didn't have this complete picture of their pricing problem. For example, marketing, promotions, and other factors were unlikely to be considered. And really now the landscape today, it's all around having the most up-to-date and latest information to be able to make these informed decisions. As well, what we're seeing more and more with the conversations that I have is that retailers are looking to be very customer-centric. This personalization, is being driven by data analytics to enhance the overall customer experience. So, this last quote is more around, this term predictive pricing, which is something that I'm going to drill down a little bit more in the next section. But really, what we're looking to do here is actually start to predict the future. So historically, data analytics and data decisions were based on historical data. But now with predictive pricing, we're looking more at the future, drilling down into the specifics of what exactly this is. The very top here with rule-based pricing is what we consider kind of data-led decisions, but only based on humanly programmed logic. So within pricing, this might be setting rules around seeing stock levels being at a certain amount, and therefore having a rule whereby you decide to decrease the price to get rid of the stock. With these systems, it's all being inputted by a human, and being a human, this is typically prone to error. However, with predictive pricing, what we're looking to do, what it enables you to do is reverse engineer the process. So actually what you're starting with is your overall target or commercial goal that you have in mind. Again, the clues in the name. So you're taking these predictions and you're forecasting and simulating the different scenarios that can give you the desired impact. Again, this is all done before the customer's seen the price, before you've actually uploaded this price or put it in store. So again, this is a different type of data-led decision making because it's more around this predictive analytics. Drilling down into exactly how this works. So really with this approach, it's all about utilizing the most relevant data factors. So here we see that typically retailers will look at their internal data, but then also they'll look externally as well, whereby that might be competitor prices, seasonality factors, holidays, days of the week. Again, this really varies depending on what kind of industry segment. If you're in the games industry, for example, selling computer games, things like Metacritic score and reviews of a certain game is going to be probably quite important. And that's why it's important to understand this from a retailer to retailer perspective. With all of this data, that's when this forecasting component happens, where you're able to forecast and understand if you change the price of any of your products, what is going to be the impact on your KPIs. So things like profit, revenue, margin, conversion rates, return rates, all of this is computed. And then this gives rise to the ability to run optimizations. So really the key part here is that although we have all of this forecasting information, what's really important is that you're able to steer this in a desired way. For example, this could be by setting a particular profit point that you want to achieve, or by looking at a competitor and deciding to be 10% more cheaper than them, for example. And how does this work? So really being an AI-powered solution, I mean, AI is very much a buzzword, namely machine learning algorithms. What we're able to do and what predictive pricing is able to do is essentially beat that humanly programmed approach and rules that they set. You're able to set the strategy and still have the end goal in mind, but really pricing is about crunching these numbers at a very high scale. And this just helps you to execute this systematically better than a human can. Again, to go into the technologies that's being used here, the first would be the forecasting capability. So having specific machine learning models for profit, sales, cost. Then with this forecasting data, you then have the ability to run optimizations. Really having a front end that's intuitive is very important. I'll detail that in a little bit, why that is. But again, this approach leads to the fact that you're able to steer your price strategy in whatever direction you'd like. I mean, last slide before I move on, but the real differentiators between this rule-based approach or this data-led approach, just looking at historical data, is that with this approach, you're able to leverage a lot more important and relevant data features. I think a key thing as well here is determining what data is actually useful for the model. There's a common theme with AI tools is that if you're not giving it the data that is required or clean data, then what you're going to get out of it is not going to be the best that it could possibly be. This allows you to use this term price elasticity. Really, this is considered the holy grail of price optimization. And once you understand if a product's very inelastic or elastic, then you're able to steer the pricing strategy and set a certain price that will maximize your KPIs. As well with this approach, what we're seeing is that you can look at doing channel specific pricing or if you're selling into many geographies, country specific pricing. Again, why this is useful is because if you're relying on pricing that is just rule based, when looking at selling on marketplaces or in different geographies, that's going to be a lot of computations that you would have to do manually, or you'd have an analyst do. But with a tool that is centralizing and keeping this all in one source of truth, essentially, you can do this at a much quicker scale. As well, with this approach, it allows you to be more robust with your analytics. So a big problem we would maybe have at Sainsbury's is trying to understand how you should give a discount for a certain product if you don't have historical transactions. However, with this approach, because we're looking at a lot more data features than just transactions, but things like stock, the cost of the product, market conditions, holidays, etc., you're able to paint a much clearer picture of what the optimal price should be for that product. And then the last 2 points, I mean, the fact that it's goal driven, it's always being optimized towards a certain goal. Unlike the rule-based approach based on historical data, you have to constantly try and come up with rules that are going to achieve a higher level of profit. Whereas with this approach, retailers are able to, as the first step, put in this goal in mind and put this into the tool. And then lastly, as well, with this approach, you're able to get all of this forecasting information that you can use for stock decision purposes or for looking at return rates, conversion rates, etc. Yeah, I mean, this part of the presentation is, going to move on to kind of examples that we're seeing in the UK space. But first, really the key tips and requirements that we're seeing from UK retailers in order for this approach to work is first and foremost the ability for effective change management. So what I mean by this, I mean, change management is quite a big topic, but really, if you're looking to adopt this approach, I would say the organization needs to be bought in. Number one, this can be through knowledge sharing and talking around being a data-led organization. But then secondly, the actual tool itself, being an AI tool, needs to be very transparent. So with our predictive pricing approach, for every price decision or price change that we're suggesting, there's a step-by-step explanation on why the algorithm has chosen this desired price. And this, leads to the organization being able to get behind this approach. Secondly, definitely, strong data foundations. So having the desired data that's required to train these machine learning models and have effective predictions. If there's gaps in the data, there's only so far that kind of analytic techniques can use to try and paint over this problem, but having a strong data foundation really sets you in good stead. Third, definitely a willingness to test and learn. With this approach, it's all about being agile and really having that eagerness to test the approach. And then lastly, I would say having a clearly defined objective and goal in mind. So if you're looking at this topic, is it because you're looking to make the end price for the consumer more competitive, or is it a profit and revenue optimization objective? Having these objectives and goals in mind will mean that when looking at a tool, you're able to understand very quickly if it's going to work or not. I mean, looking at some examples in the UK, first, what came to my mind, when creating this presentation was Tesco and their club card prices. I remember when this was first launched, I think it was 2019, but really walking into a Tesco and seeing two different prices displayed on one product was a really big shock, just from a kind of consumer standpoint. This definitely had a lot of backlash, whereby, customers that are not frequent shoppers of Tesco would feel they're not being done justly because they have to then get a club card and therefore have the price that members would have. But actually, the way that Tesco implemented this was very clever. They didn't go from 0 to 100 very quickly, but actually they scaled it in a way that consumers would be happy to make that trade-off decision. And as well, I'm sure Tesco saw that the trade-off between getting someone to be more loyal and sign up to a program is going to outweigh the cost of potentially losing a customer. Secondly, an example here is with Currys. Actually, I remember when I bought a TV that actually displayed in their store was around their price match. I think this is only for part of their assortment where they're selling third-party products, and they make this promise that they'll match the lowest competitor. I think this is an interesting strategy, to be honest, when looking at economics and the theoretical principles there, is that if you see two players in an economy competing on price, what's really going to happen is that you're going to just drive down your margin, and therefore, yeah, the market's going to become complete, and actually the revenue and the profit that you're able to get from a customer is always going to be diminished as well. Making a bold promise like this, it might be difficult to scale it back. It would be interesting to see how their customers would react. Lastly, actually, what's happened very recently, I think around a month or so ago, ASOS, announced that they are piloting a chatbot for price haggling. I think this is really cool. I think definitely from my perspective, and I think a lot of people who go shopping at like stalls in markets, some people enjoy this process. Like they feel like they're getting a good deal. I think what's important to be wary about here is the analytics and the decision making process of that chatbot. Are they finding the most optimal discount for either the player in the economy or the retailer? That's still a question that I think would be interesting to get the answer to. But I think that we're going to see a lot more pricing initiatives like this to try and get rid of the transparency that's happening in the market. I'll also talk about in a little bit about regulation that's happening in the UK. But I think an initiative like this is giving retailers the ability to have more flexibility on pricing, but then it's also making consumers feel like they have this flexibility also. So I mean, really to kind of summarize, I think with this slide, looking forward, we'll see the future of pricing retail maybe, well, definitely have an increased use of AI machine learning, looking at all the statistics of from 2015 to 2024. This adoption levels are just getting larger and larger. It's really a no-brainer. I think the biggest question for retailers is where do they prioritize AI use cases? Is it in personalization? Is it in coupons? But really, a lot of the big consultancies like Gartner, McKinsey, all are pointing towards pricing as being the most attractive use case to focus on because it has the highest commercial impact. But then secondly, out of these initiatives, it's one of the easier ones to implement. As well, I think pricing is going to become more and more personalized. The topic of personalization is everywhere in the UK. This may start to mirror what we see in B2B pricing, where a particular company will get a special price because of certain characteristics. I think Sainsbury's as well was developing this, whereby they find the optimal price not on a customer segment level, but actually on the individual like person level as well. There's definitely a focus of bringing pricing together with other levers that retailers can pull, most namely, marketing. So being able to bring this optimization problem together to understand, does it make sense to aggressively discount a product, or should I actually be spending my budget at more Google shopping ads, for example, as well as incorporating customer lifetime value to really give you a single view of the customer and what levers it makes sense to pull. As well, this question around omni-channel pricing and how to price in-store and online. From my experience, this really varies right now across the UK retail space. Very much a kind of board level decision of how companies want to do this. I think there's going to be a more of a relationship between in-store and online going forward, and as well as geo-targeted pricing. So we see this a lot with our clients. For example, if you're selling in fashion and you're selling in Switzerland versus another European country, a lot of companies decide to charge a higher price in Switzerland because typically there's a higher willingness to pay. As well as if you're selling in different currencies, maybe it doesn't make sense to make a straight currency conversion, but instead actually factor in the willingness to pay in that local region. Definitely, it's important to be strategic here and not do all of this at once. Very much what Tesco did with their club card, where these things are rolled out quite slowly. Definitely high levels of automation. Definitely, pricing tools are going to be considered as kind of a co-pilot, whereby as the end user or as a pricing manager, you're wanting to give these specific inputs to the machine learning models and algorithm, but those day-to-day decisions and price changes are going to be done at a higher level of automation. Then lastly, I think, a couple of months ago, the UK launched more laws and regulations into having, if you're selling a product, not having hidden costs when you go to checkout, or kind of these variable costs that the end consumer doesn't know about. Again, it's the role of government to make this more fair for the end consumer. And I think this is a good thing because ultimately all retailers are putting the customer at the heart of their pricing decisions. And this is just going to lead to this happening a lot quicker as well. Yeah, I mean some other examples that I would share, but I know we're running towards time, of customers that we're actually working with here at Seven Learning. So first example here is with West Wing. They're one of the largest home and living retailers across Europe, also selling in the UK, as well as fashion brand Tom Taylor. So these are some of the high level results that predictive pricing and this most up-to-date data-led pricing approach has yielded. Again, if that's of interest, yeah, would be happy to share that via email. Happy to connect on LinkedIn. But yeah, that's what I wanted to share for today. And yeah, happy to answer any questions.